25/8 is in the business of time. We help leaders of small and medium-sized businesses work smarter, not harder, so they feel like they have an extra hour in the day and day in the week. Go from don't know what I don't know to I can't miss this show, as we talk proven strategies, practical tips and insider insights from a diverse range of industry leaders. Make time to grow your capabilities and confidence with 25/8. When it comes to technology use in your business, how many tools are you currently using? Take a moment to count them in your head. You might have an email platform, maybe a social media scheduling tool, a project management application, accounting software, a customer relationship management tool, invoicing tool, a communication platform, a delivery platform, cloud storage. You may have a booking system, a website, maybe a couple of AI tools you've been experimenting with. Most small business owners, when they actually count, get to somewhere between 12 and 20 tools. And in most cases, every single one of those tools was adopted to solve a problem or save time. That was the promise. That's why you said yes to it. So why does it feel like you have less time than before? Welcome to Make Time. I'm Sam, and I'm passionate about helping you and your business thrive by working smarter, not harder. Today, we're going to talk about the very real possibility that the tools you're using to be more productive are actually making you less productive and what to do about it. So how did we end up here? Here's how it usually goes. A problem appears, a client can't book easily, so you adopt a booking platform. Communication is getting lost, so you add a team messaging app. You're drowning in invoices, so you subscribe to accounting software. A business owner at a networking event tells you that they've tripled their social reach using a particular scheduling tool, so you sign up for a free trial. Each decision in isolation makes sense. The problem is real, the tool addresses it. But over time, you've built what is often called a reactive digital stack, or tech stack. This is a collection of tools accumulated in response to problems, not designed or considered as a whole system. And a reactive digital stack has a cost, which can often be significant. And the cost is more than money. When we talk about the cost of tools, most business owners think about subscription fees, and yes, those add up. Research from the software management platform Reactive found that the average small business underestimates its software spend by around 30%, largely because subscriptions accumulate and renewals go unreviewed. But the financial cost is actually the smaller part of the problem. The larger cost is cognitive. Every tool you use requires a login, an interface to learn, a mental model to hold, a context switch every time you move between it and something else. And context switching has a well-documented productivity cost. Research from the University of California found that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully return to a task after an interruption. If you're moving between 5 different platforms in a morning, you're not just losing the time of the switch, you're losing the depth of focus that good work requires. Add to that the administrative overhead of managing the tools themselves, updating integrations, troubleshooting errors, dealing with data that doesn't sync properly, automating between systems, and you're not saving time, you're spending it. What we find in our work with small businesses through the 25/8 programs is there is a consistent gap between what the business owners believe their digital tools are doing for them and what they're actually experiencing. When we look at the Small Business Capability Gap Index, businesses at the early survival stage typically have a fragmented, unconsidered digital environment. Most activities are still manual. Technology use is reactive rather than strategic. Owners are aware that digital tools could save them time, but haven't yet figured out how to make that true in practice. When we delivered the Colac Way digital transformation program, it gave us a really clear baseline on this. When participants were assessed at the start of the program, the average capability score was 18 out of 120. We managed to raise that by 109% by the end. But the important detail here was the biggest gains weren't from adopting new tools. They were from learning to use existing tools intentionally because they understood the tool's role in the business system. More tools isn't the answer. Clearer thinking about why tools exist and how they connect to the business strategy was. Deloitte's research on SME digital confidence is instructive here too. Their analysis found that small businesses operating with fragmented, unconsidered digital stacks spend significantly more time and administration than those with deliberate integrated systems. The mechanism is quite straightforward. When data lives in multiple disconnected systems, someone has to manually move it, reconcile it, and make sense of it. And even with tools now that allow us to connect the different tools and bring the data together, someone still has to set that up and oversee it and troubleshoot that as well. When processes aren't documented, every team member, including the owner, has to make micro decisions about how to do things that should already be decided. When tools overlap in function, people default to different ones and nothing is consistent. The overhead is invisible, which is exactly what makes it dangerous. It doesn't show up as a single line item. It shows up as a persistent sense that there's never quite enough time, even when you're working hard and your revenue is reasonable. Does it sound familiar? Before I get to what to do about it, I want to give you some ways to recognize the problem, because often it's so normalized that it becomes invisible. Here are the signs that I see most often. You have information living in too many places, and often quite a lot of it in the owner's head. Customer details are on one platform, communication history in another, invoices in a third. If someone asks you right now to pull a complete picture of a specific client, their history, their last invoice, their last communication, how long would that take you? If the answer is more than 2 minutes, potentially you have a fragmentation problem. Another sign is that you're doing things manually that should be automatic. Copying and pasting information between systems, manually updating spreadsheets that could be connected to live data, re-entering the same details in multiple places. Manual work that could be automated is time you're spending on execution instead of thinking. Your team may be using different tools for the same thing. Some people use a messaging app, for example. Others might use email. Some track time in a spreadsheet. Others in a dedicated tool. Some might use text, some might use paper. Inconsistency at this level isn't just inefficient, it really creates a governance problem too. You can't build reliable reporting or delegation structures on an inconsistent foundation. Another sign is that you're paying for tools you barely use. If you haven't logged into a platform in the last 30 days, you're probably not going to get value from it. So do a quick audit and you might be surprised. When you onboard a new team member, it feels overwhelming. If explaining your digital environment to someone new takes more than a day, and if they're still confused a week later, that's really a signal that the environment is too complex for what you actually need to do. And finally, you feel like you're always slightly behind, not because you're not working hard, but because the systems that are supposed to support you are generating their own overhead. And this is probably the clearest signal of all. So there are two ways of building a digital environment for your business. Reactive technology adoption looks like when a problem appears, you search for a solution, you adopt the tool that comes up first or gets recommended most, you integrate it into your workflow and you move on. The problem may get solved, but the stack gets more complex, and over time, the stack starts to cost you more than the original problem. Intentional technology adoption is the second way and looks quite different. It starts not with the tool, but with the process. What does this part of my business actually need to do? How does value flow through it? Where's the friction? What would good look like? Only once you've answered these questions do you ask, is there a tool that supports this process? And if so, does it integrate with what I already have? Does it reduce my total digital overhead, or does it add to it? Our Small Business Capability Gap Index maps this progression directly. At level 3, at the lower level, businesses are beginning to use digital platforms intentionally to reach customers and test messaging. At level 5, they're implementing operational digital systems, CRMs, finance software, workflow tools, and starting to explore automation for routine tasks. The jump from level 3 to level 5 isn't about adopting more tools, it's about adopting the right ones in the right order for the right reasons. So, what's a question you can ask yourself before adopting anything new? Use, does this tool reduce my total administrative overhead, or does it just move it? Because a lot of tools don't actually eliminate work, they change where it happens. You're still entering data, you're still following up, you're still making the same decisions, you've just added another interface to it. The tools that genuinely improve productivity are the ones that either automate something that was previously manual or consolidate something that was previously fragmented. Everything else is overhead dressed up as progress. One of the best ways to consider this is to design your ideal tool based on how you want to work and serve your customers. This forms the basis of your research in what to look for. You should have the must-haves and the nice-to-haves to help you evaluate between the different tools. We have a digital investment framework that includes a formula for determining the return on investment for a digital tool. We'll share this in the show notes. I'm not going to suggest you throw everything out and start again. That's not practical and it's not necessary. What I'm going to suggest is a structured review, something you could realistically do in an hour. The first step is just to list everything, every platform you pay for, every app you use regularly, every tool a team member uses that you might not even be aware of, especially AI tools that they're using. Get it all in one place. Most business owners are surprised by how long the list actually is. The second step is to categorize by function. Group your tools by what they're supposed to do: communication, client management, financial management, marketing, operations, project management. This step alone often reveals significant overlap, 2 or 3 tools doing roughly the same job. Step 3 is to assess actual usage. For each tool, ask 3 questions. How often is it actually used? Is it being used consistently by everyone who needs it, or just by some people? And could the core function be covered by something you already have? Step 4 is to identify the friction points. Where in your current digital environment do you lose time? Where do things fall through the gaps? Where does data have to be moved manually? Where does inconsistency creep in? Those are your priority improvement areas. And the final step is to make decisions, not just observations. For each tool in your stack, 1 or 3 things should happen. You should keep it and use it properly, which might mean training your team or documenting how it should be used. You replace it with something that better serves the function, or you remove it entirely because the function either doesn't need a dedicated tool or is already covered somewhere else. The goal of the audit isn't a perfect digital environment. It's really about simplicity, more intentional use, fewer decisions, less overhead, more capacity for the work that actually matters. What does the right stack actually look like for a small business? I'm deliberately not going to name specific tools here because the right answer depends on your business, your team, your stage, and your sector, and tools continue to evolve increasingly. What I will give you is the function-based framework that most small businesses that are trying to grow need to have covered. The first one is a way to manage client relationships. This doesn't have to be sophisticated CRM. At the early stages, even a well-structured spreadsheet is better than nothing. And actually, again, the way we're moving with AI, spreadsheet could be a really good option. The key is that client history, communication, and status live in one place that everyone can access, and it's secure. The second, a financial management system. Your numbers need to be visible, current, and accessible without having to reconstruct them from memory or paper. This is the single highest return digital investment for a business at a survival stage. You need to see the numbers so that you can make decisions against them. Third, a communication structure, not necessarily a single tool, but a clear agreement about what communication goes where, what gets handled by email, what gets handled by a team channel, what gets a phone call, what is in person. Unclear communication structure creates as much overhead as unclear systems. Fourth is a way to manage your work, whether that's a project management tool, a shared task list, or a simple weekly planning process. The function is essentially the same. Everyone needs to know what's happening, what they're responsible for, and when things are due. Making that really transparent between the team helps everyone know what's going on. The fifth is a marketing and content presence, and this doesn't require multiple platforms. It just really means that you have to be intentional about which channel or channels you use, why, and what a sustainable practice, marketing, sales and marketing practice actually looks like for your business. So those are the sort of 5 functional areas. You might have something that's industry or sector specific, but really that's about those areas should be the foundation for most small businesses. Here's a principle that we live by. Technology should serve your processes. Your processes should serve your strategy. Your strategies should serve your goals, and your goals should serve your customers. When technology gets adopted without that chain of reasoning, it becomes overhead. It becomes one more thing to manage, one more thing to learn, one more thing that can go wrong. And the weight of all that overhead is exactly what makes capable, hardworking business owners feel like they're never getting ahead. The most productive digital environment isn't the most sophisticated one. It's the one that has the fewest points of friction between you and the work that actually creates value in your business. Having recently had to migrate and clean up a system, I can tell you firsthand how liberating reducing dependence on multiple tools actually is. A tool only delivers value when it serves as a cog in a well-oiled system. Ideally, every tool should have an owner, someone who's responsible for it, a workflow, which is an understanding of when and how it's used, and a metric that gives you an idea of what success looks like, so that you can make decisions about whether it's working for you or not. I believe the advancements in AI tools will definitely help us build better and more consolidated systems into the future. There's a version of productivity that looks very busy, lots of tools, lots of activity, lots of notifications, lots of switching. And then there's a version of productivity that actually moves the business forward, fewer decisions, clearer processes, technology that supports what you're trying to do rather than creating its own demands. The gap between those two versions is often a capability gap, and it's one that most small business owners never address directly because it doesn't feel urgent. It just feels like a bit of background noise of running a business. But the background noise has a cost, and when you reduce it, the clarity that appears on the other side is quite remarkable. This week, if I can, I'd encourage you to do one thing. Count the tools you currently use to run your business. Actually count them, write them down, and then ask yourself honestly, which ones are genuinely saving me time and which ones have I just got used to managing? And that's the start of the audit. And the audit is the start of something better. If you would like a structured way to assess where your digital capability sits alongside your business and your human capability, join the 25-8 program where you'll complete a comprehensive diagnostic that helps you pinpoint exactly what you can do for your business, helping you build more intentionally and increase productivity without increasing human labor. The links are in the show notes. Thanks for making time for this week's episode, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Make Time, a business podcast by 25-8. If you like the show, Please take a moment to write a review and feedback on what you'd like to hear next. If you never want to miss an episode, hit subscribe or follow on your favourite listening channel. If you want to get even smarter, join our newsletter, community, or take one of our programs. Links down below. See you next time.